We are quorate. Today's meeting is being filmed for live and subsequent broadcast by the way of the Council's internet site. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the Council. As you will see from the agenda papers, generally the public seating areas are not filmed. However, by entering the meeting room and using the public seating areas, you are consenting to being filmed and to be the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. Proposed public speakers have been made aware of the broadcasting arrangement prior to the meeting. Would members please use their microphones to contribute to the meeting, and please remember to switch the microphone off when you have finished. Members dialing in remotely, please only turn on your camera when you wish to speak, and please remember to switch it off when you have finished. Also, could you ensure that you refrain from using any mobile devices during the committee and that any devices are silent. Done. Okay. Any apologies? We've got Councillor Jones. Do we have any off Councillor Linden? No. No? Okay, thank you. Does any members have any interest today in any of the agenda items? No? Can we... Sorry?
Just at St Andrew's application, primary school is in my ward.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Thanks. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes of the last meeting, page 3 to 6? Only the one where we just noticed that the apologies are for Councillor Linton instead of Councillor Hardy. Okay, thank you. Okay, we now go on then, please, to the planning application schedule for today. Item number 1, pages 15 to 39. Application number 23/0327, and this will be presented by Joanne.
Thank you, Chair. Morning all. Okay, first application, St Andrew's Primary School in the Liswerry ward. The site is hatched in blue there. The details contained on your agenda confirming the proposal, construction of a 3-storey new teaching block incorporating junior teaching accommodation, ancillary facilities and inclusion zone and landscape reconfiguration. Site area outlined in red. The rest of the school site you can just see outlined in blue because this only relates to the junior element of the school, not the entire school site. For those not familiar, this is an aerial shot with the entire school shaded in red, just outlining how it was, and I'll explain that a little more in a second. So the focus of the proposal we've got today is here. So under my cursor, the former junior school teaching block. Pretty much everything else you see annotated on that aerial shot remains the same. It isn't affected by this proposal. So this is the former junior school teaching block. It has, since that photo was taken, been demolished. Demolition was urgently necessary because of structural problems with the building, and that demolition occurred several months ago. Since that time, junior school pupils and staff have been bused from the St Andrews site every day or every school day to and from the Connect Centre, perhaps better known as the YMCA at the bottom of Mendelgeef Road. As you can imagine, that has significant operational implications for the school and cost implications for the education service of the council. So the education service are really very keen to progress the building of a permanent new school, junior school, on this site as soon as possible. Officers support that, and that is a significant benefit or merit of this proposal. Apologies. Right. Here's some different angles or views of the school as was. So what we're looking at here is the junction of Corporation Road and Jenkins Street with the staff car park behind the wall and fence there. The wall and railings, I should say, stay. No changes there. And the car park stays. No changes there either. The building, obviously, you can see that's been demolished. Again, under my cursor, a really sizable, very traditional brick-built structure, quite high, really generous floor-to-ceiling heights as you'd expect of that era, and some quite prominent gable features, along with that horizontal banding and vertically emphasised windows. Very attractive, actually, in architectural terms. So the proposed scheme or site plan is here. So just picking up on a couple of points I've just mentioned. The staff car park, exactly where it is now, stays the same with access off Jenkins Street, again, as per existing. The school building, being the main element of perhaps what we're talking about today, is this L-shaped building. Sorry, my cursor isn't very reactive. The L-shaped building, which is in approximately the same position as the building that's been demolished. It looks different, and I'll show you some slides in a moment confirming that, but it's L-shaped, and just a couple of points to note on this site plan. The relationship with Jenkins Street properties and the relationship with Corporation Street properties doesn't really change compared to the building that was demolished. In terms of the relationship with Milner Street, which is the street to the south there, the design has had regard to that context, that relationship. It's put the higher element of the building in the sort of orange-brown coloured area on that plan. It then steps down to the blue coloured area to around a 2-storey level, and then the yellow area is single-storey. So height-wise, perhaps I'll better show you on the elevations when I get to those. So this is just a closer view of those relationships to the Milner Street properties. So they'll have direct line of sight to the new building as they did the old building. But as I say, the plan has adapted to context by keeping that yellow area single storey, so much lower level than the rest of the building proposed. There's no plan to expand school capacity. It's not about that. It's about replacing the lost educational space as a result of the demolition. So this is the proposed building. So here I'll talk about the heights. So that tallest element is a stairwell structure to serve the new building, and that's 16 metres maximum height. We then have the 3-storey primary classroom block, which is 13.19 metres high. And then we drop down on the side closest to Milner Street. That's actually, it's around 2-storey height. It's, bear with me, 8.87 metres high. But it is the main hall. So it'll have, it'll be 1-storey with a very high floor-to-ceiling level. And then on the back, which is the lower image, the rear view, you can see that single-storey. Which will be 5.5 metres high. So these are the other two elevations of relevance. The one at the top you're looking at is what you'll see as you travel south along Corporation Road, so the elevation that would face the staff car park and Jenkins Street. And then on the bottom, this is what you'll see from Milner Street. So a couple of key points here. We've picked up in our reports one of the main factors being design. It has been subject to pre-application discussion with us, and there has been discussions about the design. So this is a later iteration in response to the discussions that we've had about it. It's a large building, clearly to replace the lost school space. So to try and have regard to the building that it has replaced, you can see this use of red brick, which we support, the use of a slightly darker red cladding on the stairwell on the left of the top image and the main hall on the right, and that horizontal banding, which will be in a buff brick, again to pick up some of that architectural detailing on the building that's being demolished. And you'll see the windows and fenestration detail retain that vertical emphasis, i.e. they're tall and slim. So some artists' impressions of the building, giving you some 3D views of it. So a couple of other things to note. The brick wall and railing around the front of the building will be removed. The rest will be retained. One of the key operational advantages of this, and fully supported by the school's headmistress, is to get a better engagement with Corporation Road, have a much more active frontage to the school. So at the moment you can't enter the school off Corporation Road. But they'd like to open that elevation up, and that's why we've got this feature canopy and entranceway to Corporation Road. That's going to be the visitor entrance to the school. The pupil entrance will be to the left of this artist's impression, kept separate, and something I'll pick up on the photos that I show you later in the presentation. The pupil entrance will align with an existing pedestrian crossing on Corporation Road. It's picking up on those desire lines for pupils that walk to school, and a significant proportion, based on a straw poll of the pupils here, do walk. Okay, it's the primary mode of transport for primary school children in the junior block. So that's an important feature. Just a slightly different angle here for the artist's impression, looking a little bit more directly at it from Corporation Road. So something that is also included in this, we have an old access off Milner Street that was or did serve as the main access, I believe, to the staff car park years ago, and before it was changed to Jenkins Street. That access is still there. The proposal is to close that up, continue the footpath across. Again, this facilitates those pedestrian movements along Milner Street. So the only access off Milner Street will be pedestrian. So there'll be no vehicular access. They're going to close that off. That'll be when the new school building becomes operational, because we need that open during the construction phase. So a couple of other things that were on the site plan I showed you. Cycle stands, that's talked about in the officer report. They will be provided. They'll be in the region of 50 spaces for bikes, or safe storage of bikes provided on the site. And a substation is also required, and that's located in the staff car park area. And that's what it looks like. Okay, again, a little bit of a comparison between what was there before and what is proposed now, really to get a sense of the change in the massing of the building. So this is as clear as I could get this slide, unfortunately, but you can see what is actually in a red line is the outline of the school that was demolished. And this top line. Oh, my cursor isn't going to work very well, sorry. So the top line is the ridge height of the school that was demolished on that top image. And what that's showing us, with there's a bold, dark line on the left-hand side. That's just showing us that the maximum height of the highest part of the new building, that's the stairwell, is the same height as the ridge of the school that was demolished. That's 16 metres. And again, it just gives you that idea of the difference in massing. You can see the width of the new building is different. So we've lost some scale on the left-hand side. That's the Jenkins Street side. But we've got the new build moving slightly closer on the right-hand side to the Milner Street boundary in the region of 2 metres closer. The image underneath, again, is showing you the change in massing as you're looking at it from Milner Street. So you can see at the moment the overall massing of the building that's been demolished is quite a bit bigger, as was, than it is proposed now. So I'll take you quite briefly through the floor plans because, not unexpectedly, they show a lot of classrooms. So this is the ground floor. The main hall is under my cursor on the right-hand side. And again, we can see as we progress up the stories to first floor, we've got that high ceiling void on the right-hand side over the main hall, more classroom, staff space, and other teaching space. And as I say, that area on the back there is single story. And then we go up to the third floor of teaching space. A couple of points to pick up here. The flat roof on top of the main hall will be accessible from the third floor teaching space, but is going to be covered in solar panels. This is to meet net zero carbon requirements in the new build. And then as we move up to the roof plan, you'll see the roof of the main teaching block, the 3-storey element, will also be covered in solar panels. And in addition, it will be a green roof. So we've got two things going on with the main roof. It'll be green, so it'll be planted up, and it will have solar panels. And all of these are to meet net zero carbon requirements of the new build. A section here just to demonstrate that because of the parapet walls that form part of the design, those solar panels aren't particularly going to be visible. So they're not going to be a key design feature that you'll see from the street. And you'll see that there's just a very slight shallow pitch on the roof for obvious reasons. Okay, looking at the more operational side of things then, this is what we're getting. We've already got 32 staff parking spaces in that car park. That's not changing. It means exactly the same. As I say, the purpose of this isn't to expand the capacity of the school, so we don't need any more spaces. And that number of spaces actually exceeds our adopted SPG parking requirement based on the number of teaching staff and students at the site. What we are getting is 4 electric vehicle charging spaces now and 2 accessible spaces for disabled, and they go in to identify some particular spaces for car sharing, and this is all part of the travel plan document that the school will have. Cycle parking, I've shown you the shelter, but there'll be 50 bike spaces in total. That isn't in accordance with our SPG requirement. It falls short. So it is in accordance with the long-term bike requirements or bike parking requirements, but short-term it does fall short. Now what the agent has argued is that actually quite a small number of the children bike to school. It's very low. I think I read the proportion was about 3%. So we've got, in the region of 60% walk into school, very small proportion on bike, the rest are dropped off in cars. So they're concerned more bike spaces will just be wasted. So it's something they want to monitor going forward. If they can encourage more children to bike to school, then more spaces may be provided. And I think that's a reasonable approach, and officers have no objection to that. Another key issue that we've picked up in our report is flood risk. So a common one, we've heard this before. The proposal for a school is, like residential, highly vulnerable development. Okay, so we've got those added tests and considerations because of that. It is in Zone C1 in accordance with the current Technical Advice Note 15, and for the purpose of the most up-to-date flood risk maps, it's in what we call a defended Zone 3. So this is an extract taken from the flood consequence assessment. We've got no objections to the flood consequence assessment, and what it's telling us actually is that even the existing school is at quite low risk from both fluvial and tidal flooding. It would experience some low flooding during the worst case tidal flood event. That's the 1 in 1,000 year. And so to remedy that, so the building will be flood free in every modelled flood event, they propose to raise the finished floor level to 7.7 metres OD. That's 4 centimetres higher than the current finished floor level. So visually, no notable change. And what that tells us then is that that building will not flood in any modelled flood event. So it passes those particular tests in the technical advice note. What may happen, though, is that during the worst-case flood scenario, surrounding roads and footways will be flooded. The model scenario suggests low-level flooding and low-velocity flooding. Probably not a surprise to anyone. And the level of flooding, i.e. the depth of flooding around the school building, and the velocity is below the maximum thresholds in the TAN. So again, not an objectionable factor. The other thing is those events that would flood the neighbouring roads are tidal. So we would fully expect some advance warning, and it would be for the school to react accordingly by either closing or retaining pupils on site, because the impassability of the neighbouring roads would probably be for a few hours whilst that tidal cycle evolves. So again, the conclusions of the flood consequence assessment, which we agree with, and NRW raised no objection to. I've just highlighted the key points there. The primary flood risk is tidal, and it's only realised as a result of future climate change. The risk of flooding will be managed on site by raising the building to a level of 7.7. As I said, only 4 centimetres higher than the current the finished floor level of the demolished building. So we're satisfying the tests in the technical advice note, and therefore we've got no objections on flood risk grounds to this proposal. So let's run through some photographs now, again for added context. So this is an image from Jenkins Street, looking at that access from Jenkins Street that will be retained to serve the staff car park. No changes here. This is taken from Corporation Road, looking at the Milner Street access and looking at the site now that the previous building has gone. Milner Street, looking down Milner Street with the retained infant school block on the right-hand side. So that building is there, it's staying, nothing proposed with that. And again, looking at the site now that it's cleared. And the neighbouring Carnegie Library, similar design, an attractive building, just trying to show that context. I mentioned this earlier, the existing pedestrian crossing So the design has had regard to that, and the site layout will align the pupil entrance off Corporation Road, the new pupil entrance off Corporation Road, to that desire line at the pedestrian crossing. So aerial photo, this is obviously showing the previous building in place. We've proposed several conditions that you'll see in your agenda. One of them is an important pre-commencement condition, and that relates to a method statement for details of the demolition, construction, logistics. Okay, this is important because we are in a densely developed area, and we've got those accesses on Jenkins Street and Milner Street with residences close by. So, you know, that's going to be important, and that's detail that we need to seek and secure through condition. I would suggest some tweaking of the wording in that condition. So instead of saying method statement, it is in fact a final construction environmental management plan, and we'll tweak that condition with your agreement to make that clear. But the requirements listed in the condition stand, they're all still necessary, and the interim construction management plan that we've already been provided with gives us confidence that an acceptable logistical arrangement can be achieved. Okay, that's it from me, Chair. Happy to take questions, but obviously officers are recommending it be granted subject to condition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Excuse me. We have no public speakers, so we'll go straight to questions. Does anybody have any questions, please? Councillor Mogford? Sorry? Councillor Jordan?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I totally agree. You know, the application and the details gone into it has been very, very sort of thorough. You know, it's good to see like the diversity as well for the school, with the solar panels, everything else. With the solar panels, would those solar panels actually run to complete the school, the whole school itself?
I don't honestly know. I suspect so because they are trying to reach net zero carbon. Something I didn't mention actually in the presentation, but I'll just point out to you. So we've mentioned the green roof, we've mentioned the solar panels, a couple of other things that differ to the current school. Site plan's best, I think. So these things here, this little compound, if my cursor will help me, the little compound there with the circles you can see in it, hopefully. So these are elements of plant that are additional. So because this is new build, we've got some sort of new expectations that needs to have regard to. One of them is the fire safety sprinkler building control requirement. So that plant area there includes air source heat pumps. So again, that's contributing to the net zero carbon aspirations, but also tanks relating to the sprinkler system that will be installed in the new building. Sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier. But in terms of whether it will serve the school, I'd like to think the answer to that would be yes.
Also, look as well on the diagram as well. On the second floor, is that where actually the school canteen's going to be then? Is it on the second floor?
We'll get there in a minute.
This is testing my eyesight now. Staff room, I think. Library. I think the main hall will serve as personally, I think the main hall will be where the children will gather for food. So the plan we're looking at now, I've got as library. That's the larger of the areas on the top left. And then in the top left, I think, is staff room.
So, yeah, sorry.
Is it another building, is it? Okay, there you are.
Yeah, if we look at, there's a drawing on here on page 25, where it says existing dining, just off the car park area. Yeah, and I can remember that as a kid. I used to go along there, and it's always been there, I think, yeah. Yeah, so that's the dining area. Yeah. Okay, anything else, Councillor Jordan?
Yeah, going back a second. With the police, it was a message there from with the police as well. On the it was 4.1. It said they would welcome a further communication with the developers to advertise a finer detailed design, layout, physical security of the site, and also design a potential future crime and antisocial behaviour. I noticed on the pictures itself, on the old one, they've got no railings in front on Corporation Road. I know Corporation Road can be a very, very busy road. Is there going to be anything along that there to stop the kids from running out onto the road? Like I said, it's not there now, but now they're going to open it all up. Would it give more a scope for the kids to sort of run freely around a bit there?
Okay, let's go back to the site plan. Obviously, the operational issues relating to the school will be for the school in large part, but just to clarify, the reason the railings and the wall are going from Corporation Road is to give a more active frontage and to give opportunities for landscaping along the frontage, which actually is for everyone's benefit, not just the schools. But on the site plan, okay, so the pupil entrance is aligned, as I say, with that pedestrian crossing and will be fenced or gated. So what is likely to happen, I imagine, is that there'll be an element of parent congregation around this setback gate, which is the pupil entrance. My cursor's almost there. So it will have a continuous boundary, but part of the boundary will be the frontage and part of the side of the new building, if that makes sense. So all areas other than the building itself will retain the existing brick wall and railings, which are an attractive feature, so we welcome their attention. And we'll have inside the site some new sort of mesh. You typically see it on schools, type fencing as added security. But I noted the architectural liaison officer's points, and obviously the applicant will have seen those as well. So it'll be up to them to engage further if they see fit.
Councillor Owls?
Thanks, Chair. Generally, I'm pleased to see the updated design is more in keeping with the original building, so the changes are great there. In terms of design, I would have rather seen some stone sills instead of the buff brick on the front, if I'm honest with you. I presume that the buff brick will just be a stretch, of course, along the front, but I think sort of a stone effect sort of sill along those would have been much more sort of in keeping with the original design and the existing building there and Carnegie Library. Do we know whether the construction will be piled in terms of foundation or not? Have we got the detail in terms of foundation?
No, but I think we reasonably need to control that through the construction environmental management plan in terms of timing. It's something I would expect to see in that sort of document, and for the timing of any piling works to be controlled, because something else I didn't mention, obviously they're really keen to get started for obvious reasons. We're anticipating site setup probably this summer holiday, with a real eagerness to actually start over the summer holidays too. So this is I think education see this as quite a rapidly progressing scheme with a view to completion end of next year, possibly.
Thanks. That was my point on the piling. Really needs to be picked up in the Kent because of the sort of surrounding areas, and I'm aware from the demolition of the original school there was some impact on the dwellings in the neighbouring streets in terms of movement and all the rest of it. So I think that needs to be picked up. In terms of the Kemp, I'm sort of really keen to see the detail. There's also a comment in the report about sort of a kind of active travel type sort of role, which is almost like a community liaison type role, I think. And that asks for the school parents and governors to be included in that sort of work and consultation. And I'd be grateful if we could add in the local councillors to be included in that work so that we can work with them. We had lots of involvement when the school was being demolished. Significant complaints about staff parking actually was the issue. So when the car park closed, staff were given a temporary car park at the Mary Dunn Club at the end of Jenkins Street. It's a bit of a trek. Isn't ideal, particularly over the winter period when this happened. So dark, dingy. And also staff, I'm of the understanding, have to travel back and forth to the other school over in Pill. So they tend to park in the resident parking areas, which are currently uncontrolled. So there's no yellow lines in Jenkins Street in the main, and that's having a significant impact on residents there. There's some sort of mention in the report about potentially sort of segregating areas of parking. I wasn't clear what that was trying to say, but I'd like to see certainly a temporary residence parking position be put in place there to kind of control that. I did try and liaise with the head teacher. She did ask staff to not to park there, but in reality there's no restrictions and they just did, and it's easier, and it had a sort of massive impact on neighbours and also massive impact on dropping the kids off. The other area of concern for me is the frontage to Corporation Road. I welcome the school sort of being more open to Corporation Road, but I think that there needs to be metal railings all the way along that front of the school, like there is in sort of most schools that up at the front road, because it's easy for kids just to come running out to parents and go straight into the road, and it's also a risk in terms of cars, which, although it's a 20-mile-an-hour road, do sort of bomb down there, and it's easy to mount the curb. And I could see, so I'd expect to see some barrier, physical barrier, between the road and the pavement as well, which doesn't appear to be here now, and I'd sort of welcome some thought on that in terms of design. In terms of the bike stores, I agree they're probably not necessary to be at the higher numbers that the SPG sort of require as well. And there's, I want to emphasise the importance of the street surveys, the highway surveys that have been pointed out, probably partly because I raised those issues when they were demolishing the school. There was plant going onto the roads. We've had a number of sinkholes in the area which we've had to repair. There's lots of culverts running underneath the roads in those areas, and they're just not prone to take the heavy machinery. And we've had already sort of started sinking around by the front of the school. So I'd sort of want to make sure that that's sort of properly done and conditioned as part of the camp. There was one more point which has lost, I've completely forgot, so I will probably come back to you on it if that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Joe, do you want to come back on anything there?
Okay, I'll try and pick those points up, perhaps in reverse order then. So as for the some of the comments raised by the highway officer regarding the condition of the road pre and post work survey, that's not uncommon, but it is a matter for the highway service, not for us, in my opinion. The highway service would reach separate agreement with the developer, contractor, to undertake pre and post surveys and to recoup any costs associated with remedying any damage to the highway as a result of those works. So that really is something for highways and potentially the applicant, the education service, to engage together to come up with that agreement. As for the front boundary, yeah, this is something the design team are really keen to do, is to just open it all up. There will be a defensible boundary in terms of a raised bed or wall along the front to take that landscaping, details of which we're seeking through, or full details of which we're seeking through the condition, but no railings proposed to date.
Sorry, just to intervene there. If you can just have a look at section 713. There's no railings on the frontage of the school, but you were talking about a barrier between the road and the pavement. Yes, a guard railing is proposed, stated in 7.30. There's no worries, it's just a slightly different point, that's all.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to reiterate the point I said about the pupil entrance being fully enclosed. I think that new entrance to the front of Corporation Road is for visitors only. They're not anticipating school child traffic through that main entrance. The other thing, parking. Yes, obviously there is some temporary arrangement for staff parking at the moment, or there was at the Mary Dunn Club. I was aware of that. And through the Construction Environmental Management Plan, the arrangements for staff parking are going to have to be clearly set out because that staff car parking is going to be lost to contractor site setup and fully anticipate that HGVs will enter the site from that Jenkins Street access. So we'll need all details of those logistical elements through the management plan, but I think in all reasonable likelihood, the staff car parking will be shown in that public open space area at the top end of Milner Street, Jenkins Street, by the Mary Dunn Club, because it's the logical place to put it. That's it from me. Thanks, Chair.
I just remember the last point, which you might refer to highways anyway. The closing of the Milner Street sort of hammerhead, if you like, causes two issues. One, that sort of encourages staff, anybody, down to the bottom end of the street to turn around in a private roadway, which I know was raised as part of the comments in the report, and the road there is in particularly poor condition anyway. Secondly, there's always been an understanding with Milner Street residents and the local authority that actually parking on the school side of the road is acceptable outside of school hours. There's signs that depict that, so the restrictions are actually only in place between, I think, about sort of 8:30 and 3:30 from memory, but don't quote me on that. And then you can park, so despite there being yellow school lines along there, you can park there of an evening and outside of school holidays and all the rest of it. Yet the picture you put up, the artist image, suggested that there would be double yellow lines all the way down there. So I think that, and it might be a highways thing, I need to speak to highways, but we, taking the hammerhead away that's a turning circle at the moment, so people often turn in there and go back at the street and don't have to go onto the unadopted bit at the bottom. So we might want to consider adoption of the other bit if we're going to cause an increase in that. And secondly, I'd want to sort of see a similar parking arrangement where of an evening and where outside of school hours people can park on that side of the road.
My personal view is a lot of this is to be discussed with highways. I noted what the neighbours said about putting private road signage, the condition of the road at the top there that leads to those three houses. Noted all of that, but I really see those as matters for highways to pick up, as well as the agreement regarding any damage arising through the construction period.
Okay. I see there's two people waiting to come in yet. Councillor Mock, do you want to come in now?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Howells. You've answered my question. And my question was about 20 mile an hour speed limits outside the school, but you clarified that that already exists. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I can see the highways officer's got his hand up, but we'll take one more question first before we come to you, Andrew. John, Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Chair. I've got three questions, if you don't mind. I'll be quick. On the whole, I mean, this proposal, it looks really good, I've got to be honest. It's forward-looking. My first question is, to do with that, so it's been partially answered anyway, but the open access at the front, on the face of it, it looks, as I say, forward-thinking, very progressive. I do like it. I do still share those concerns that have been raised already about children being able to leave the school either unaccompanied or unsupervised. Although I realise that the pupil access is meant to be on the other side of the school. My other concern with that, though, is the security from people entering the building and having access to the school that maybe you wouldn't want to have access to the school. So I just wonder what consideration has been taken about that, about the public access to the school with the lack of a physical boundary. My second question is to do with active travel. I know in the report there were a few concerns raised about active travel. I do share those concerns. Some of the figures that were mentioned earlier, I think you said 60% of the pupils walk to school, only 3% cycle. So presumably that still leaves 37% of pupils that are dropped off by car, which seems quite a high figure to me, bearing in mind that most of the catchment is local, as far as I understand it. So I'd like to think that the plans are as good as they are. I'm hoping we're sort of looking forward as well and looking to the future to try and bring that figure down to 37%, bring that down and get more people either walking or cycling to school. So as I say, the active travel concerns that were in the report, I do share some of those concerns. My third question as well is, obviously I'm aware that the original building was 2 stories, so I'm sure this has been taken into account anyway, but I'm just wondering about accessibility for people with disabilities, how accessible the site is. As I say, I know the original building had 2 stories anyway, so that issue I would imagine would have been considered in the original building. This one having 3 stories, I just want to just double check really what the accessibility is for people with disabilities, and not so much the accessibility in terms of getting around and in the building, as important as that is. I'm thinking more in terms of emergency evacuation. What provision is there to cover that? Thanks.
There will be an active travel coordinator for the school. Again, a relatively standard expectation of schools these days, and that is to encourage more sustainable modes of transport, not just for the children and parents, but the staff as well. As I say, we'll now have those secure bike stores, the EV charge points, and some dedicated parking spaces suitable for disabled. The accessibility of the school itself, obviously the accommodation on the ground floor will be at level. I can't recall if there's any sort of lift arrangement being proposed, I'll be honest, but the main entrance and office reception will be at the ground floor, visitor entrance, all at level, classrooms at level, the main hall on the ground level. So I can't speak with any... there is a lift. Andrew's just confirmed there is a lift on the plan. I think it's possibly... next to the hall. My cursor won't take me there, but it's next to the hall shown on the plan. I'm not an expert on new school design in terms of the requirements of education and their own regulations, but I'll be highly surprised if such things are not a major factor for them in terms of a new design school. Not sure I can add any more, Chair.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Andrew would like to come in now.
Good morning, councillors. Basically, I was just going to raise, as one of the councillors just confirming that it's 20 mph outside the school, so any speeding should be on the basis of enforcement with the police. So that would incur that the design speeds are 20 mph for outside the front. We would like to see some form of TRO put into the conditions that we would have with the agreements we have going forward. So that could be tied up, and that conversation we've had with the councillors can all be linked in at that point, which I think is basically what Joanne had referred to in the agreements. So I just wanted to raise that point. Obviously, the 20 MPH has a big impact on what and can be allowed at the front of the building.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chair. I want to ask a question and perhaps make a comment as well. One issue I've had to deal with, actually, as a local councillor, is that a very recently built school by the authority actually didn't have any drop curbs at the entrance, which did cause quite a significant issue, actually, for people using sort of mobility scooters. So are we assured that that is not the case here, that there will be appropriate drop curbs where necessary, so that there is no obstacle to disabled people or people in wheelchairs, etc., passing the school? Can I just say that the authority have rectified it now, actually, after the local councillors chasing up the issue, but it did cause, I mean, literally, people just couldn't get to the shops as a consequence.
Do you want me to pick that up, Chair? All I can say really to that is, I'll come back to this picture. So this is existing and will remain. So we've got drop curbs and other factors at the pedestrian crossing, which will stay, and that will be the direct desire line into the school. The school also has the benefit of really nice wide pavements, dare I say, at this part of Corporation Road, really generously proportioned pedestrian spaces compared to some other sites I've seen. And so even with the benefit of those street trees, which will also stay, of course, there is lots of space for pedestrians to escape the main
I was thinking of the staff car park, actually. That was the issue in the school I'm thinking of, where they were forgotten, actually, in the staff car park.
Okay, here's the photo that we've got of the access off Jenkins Street, which currently leads to the staff car park, but will also be retained for the future staff car park. So we've already got that access in. We've also got ramped. You can just see it on this photo. The ramps there on the pavement to the access. That's for obviously passing pedestrians. And as I say, the entry to the school will all be at level and has to provide appropriate disability access in any event as a new build. Okay. Not sure if that answers it.
Well, if somebody could just check they're actually the part of the plan, that's fine. Can I make a brief comment as well, please? Chair? That it's an issue that's been raised by a couple of other people already, that obviously there's an issue in the report in terms of the comments of the active travel officer, who seems to take the view that perhaps the plan is quite modest. I think it's fair to say, in light of these comments, in the officer's opinion, is quite modest in terms of promoting active travel, etc. And I know that you've already made the comment that actually some of the management of that will be responsibility of highways and wouldn't necessarily go in a plan like this. Also, there's reference to an active travel plan being drawn up presumably by the management of the school, involving parents, etc., etc. But I mean, with respect, in my experience, that you can draw up an active travel plan and discuss it with parents and pupils, etc. But getting people to actually commit to it in practice, it can prove rather more difficult. And it is a feature of a number of schools, I think, in the city, isn't it? That at the end of the school day, that there's a major traffic issue outside the school, and there's already a complaint from a resident here that seems to suggest that's the case here. Several schools, and it's not just a nuisance issue, I think it's a really important health issue as well, because you know, it's really very, very common that you'll find, especially in the winter, people sat for up to an hour outside the school waiting for the children to come out with the engine running. And a number of schools I can think of in the city actually have a plea outside from the school, please switch off your engine while you're waiting. Now, I know that this is a big, big issue right across the country, and I just wondered whether, you know, we're confident that everything has been built in this plan that is possible to build in to try and address that kind of issue. Because, I mean, I know a lot of things have been tried around the country in terms of, you know, controlling, in terms of the you know, if we don't build it in at the beginning in the design, it's going to be, you know, it's much more difficult to put it in later on.
Okay, yeah, thanks for your comments, Steve. I'll just come in there. I think you're correct. All schools is an issue within Newport, I think. And with this not being a brand new design of the ground as such as just a school, it makes it hard to implement things more, I think. But you are correct, and I do believe it's something that we as a council need to look at as an active plan of getting parents, and let's be honest, it is parents who, and I take my kids to school, and some days I do take my car. So it is an activity of parents and grandparents, I suppose, that we need to educate. Tim, you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just a point of clarity. Going back to the fencing across the entrance, you said there's a barrier there. How far does that barrier extend beyond that entrance? Because from my reading of the drawings, it only goes a couple of metres either side. There's nothing stopping the children going a few metres further up, jumping that planter and getting onto the road. Could you have that extended to full length of the school either side?
This is a difficult one because the headmistress of the school, who's been there quite a long time, I understand, so arguably knows the school and the operational requirements very well, has been a really key inputter to the design and layout, I believe. So I not being familiar with the operation of the school myself, this is a difficult one. I mean, the safety of the children is obviously going to be paramount for the school, and they clearly feel that the design as it stands, with the fencing, etc., as it stands, achieves the requirements. I can understand the concerns because we are removing a section. We are opening up that active frontage to Corporation Road, but that was actually seen by the design team and the headmistress as a really important benefit of the new design compared to the previous. So, difficult one. We could, if members have a really particular concern about this gap in the frontage there and security, we could impose a condition to seek further clarity. I'm not keen on it myself. I feel like it's an operational thing for the school more than anything, but we could seek further details in that respect.
Could we?
I do believe on the old school it was completely fenced in across the front. So as we had teachers saying that there's no problems, there may not be. She haven't had it open like this before. What I'm suggesting is not fencing the school off itself, is where that fence comes along the road where they cross. If you could extend that along the footpath either side, so the front of the school is still open, but so even if they jump that planter, they still can't run onto the road. They've got to go onto the pavement and then onto that fence. And I think it will also prevent, as we're saying, people parking in front, because if there's a fence there, They can't park and the kids just jump straight out onto the footpath and run into school. They're going to have to, you know, move on or walk their kids to school like others. That's why I'm suggesting it's not fencing the school off, it's the footpath where the crossing is, either side, because I know those bay lanes only go so far. There's nothing stopping them moving further down the school and jumping that wall straight onto the path and straight onto the road.
I think, looking at the drawing there, that is a raised bed, is it, where they're going to plant things? It isn't a wall as such, so they'd have to climb up on there to jump over. That is my understanding of it. But I think what you're on about is the entrance to that, between the car park and the school. Is there a fence across there at all? I understand what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, I might be misunderstanding your concern. Are we concerned? So the pupil entrance at the top of the school, the new school building here. So that's where the school children will enter the school. That'll be fully controlled and secured. So it'll be staffed. It'll only be open when the children need to go into school and line up or exit the school. Are we concerned about the integrity of that bit, or are you concerned that once they've come out of the school, so they're released from the school and they're in the parents' control, are you concerned about them running along, running out here?
Can I just come in here?
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying is, but so they come out of the school, turn left, and then come to the pavement. You're worried about the pavement part right the way along.
I'm not saying fence the school off. I'm saying extend that where they cross the road to go into school, and you've got the railings either side. Just extend them a bit further. I think it'd be safer for the children. I know what you're saying. You want a lovely looking front of school, but my concern is health and safety of the children first, because that school was completely surrounded, if I remember right.
Yes, but once you come out,
I know what the headmistress is saying, but she can't say, "Oh, we got no concerns," when the school was completely fenced off in the past.
Yeah, but once the parents come out onto the pavement, it's still open to the elements anyway now.
Yeah, I understand that, but it's all.
Sorry?
They go out on two sides.
Yeah,
it's very busy there.
so listen, we can say that for every school in Newport. I think, I'm a governor on St Julian's Primary, and that's the same. Once you come out of the fence, you've got the road. Sorry, Andrew, can you come in then? All 72?
Okay, so where we've got the gate for the pedestrian access, lining up with the pedestrian crossing, a guardrail is proposed. So we haven't got the potential of excitable school children running straight out of the pedestrian access, straight into Corporation Road. So there's a guardrail there. It doesn't enclose anything. It's like a deterrent, so they can't run straight through. If I think I'm understanding you correctly, you want the guardrail to extend all along the front.
All along the front of the pavement.
Along the
and
front
the
of
road.
the pavement, along the side of the school, just to start with, because there's nothing stopping them. I know there's a planter there, it's 3 foot. We're talking about kids, there's nothing stopping them jumping down and jumping straight onto the footpath and run down that way to meet mum and dad instead of, how excitable kids are. All I'm saying is if that railing's extended, it'd be a lot safer for the children. That is a busy road along there.
I feel like we're having the discussion in the absence of a critical party a little bit here. I do wonder, I can see that the school may have some operational objections to that, and they may be able to make a good case why they haven't shown it so far, but I don't know necessarily what that is, which is why I say it's obviously a key concern for the committee. So maybe it's something we need to seek further details on through condition. They'll be made aware of the concerns that you've expressed. It's not something that I had particularly foreseen, I'll be honest. So I could see the continual secure boundary and the guardrail there, but you want that guardrail longer. So I think I understand where you're coming from. I think it's something then that we'll possibly have to put or suggest to you to put as a condition to seek further details. Now that might be defence of the current plan and why they've done it, how they've done it. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
True, we can word it to ensure it doesn't delay construction, definitely. And yeah, we can certainly word something up that will obtain those details, and possibly then when they give us such details or defence of the current plan, we can engage with the local councillors on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Jordan, you still want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just looked on page 33 on the front facades of the building where the visitor entrance is. Would there be put a condition into that to put like a couple of bollards in front of the main doors there to stop people from accessing like a ramrod to the school? And also, is there any security behind those doors, like shutters, to stop anybody getting into the school as well?
Just say that there will be a fence there, you'll need bollards.
At the moment, I don't think either of those things are proposed. We can perhaps... there's a definite theme here, and that is one of security for the school buildings, but also the pupils, the well-being of the pupils. So I think the condition that we just discussed can try and wrap all those things up and obtain those further and final details for agreement. We can do that.
Yeah, especially for the inside of the building. I mean, because if you've got just the double doors and that goes into the school, is there anything there to stop anybody else from getting past those double doors to access the school?
Yeah, the doors actually lead directly to the reception, which will be manned, obviously. But I think maybe you're concerned about just ongoing liabilities, perhaps, for the school when the school isn't open, maybe. So, yeah, okay. So I think we need to wrap all that up in a suitably worded condition and get those details. And as I say, liaise with the local councils when we get them through consultation.
Councillor Perkins?
Councillor Jordan asked the question I was going to, but on the barrier, it should extend as long as the zigzags for the crossing, either side at least. So, you know, that contains then the children more, because even at 20 miles an hour, cars and children don't mix.
Yeah, okay, I think that's discussion we've already had. Andrew, your hand is still up. Is that still up, or do you want to come back in?
Yeah, basically, just as the councillor said, there is this contradiction of 20 mph, and we obviously agree that vehicles and pedestrians, especially children, don't mix at any particular speed. But this is basically a principle based on public open space in front of this building here. As a highways authority and nationwide, we are advised on a regular basis to declutter as much as possible. So we wouldn't want to see the excessive use of guardrails unless there was a case illustrated that it is defending or going to stop the likely, obviously, accidents and etc. etc. Now, we wouldn't want to see the whole of the front guarded unless there was actual proof that incidents were likely to happen. We can never really say that, and this is kind of where the the devil you do, the devil you don't, if it's a kind of principle. But this school has blatantly been designed to be more welcoming and more open, and putting guardrails in will do the opposite of that, in my opinion. I do believe that the council is right about bollards to the front. There should be something about stopping vehicles from being able to ram raid and access the school. And I think that's a very sensible setup to that. I think, as Joanne has said, a lot of this can be conditioned. So I was about to drop my hand as the last questions were answered and asked. I think we would agree totally with bollards. We wouldn't agree with, at this moment in time, the full length of it being fenced off. And we'd like to see minimal fencing at the crossing as well. Perhaps that can be put into place by vertical deformations in the road, i.e. some humps or a raised table, or the crossing actually physically raised, so it's making people slow down on approach, even more so than it already being a crossing. So there's all kinds of things we can look at there. So if it's conditioned, I think that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we discussed this at length now, and that is a big concern with the front of the school and guarding. And as a planning department, they're looking at getting this moving. So to move on, I'd like to propose that we agree. This is my, I say I propose that the committee, somebody from the committee propose that we move on with the application, with a caveat in that discussions need to take place with the school and officers about some type of safeguarding at the front of the school. Are people happy with that?
I'm happy to propose that, Chair.
Sorry? Sorry, would somebody like to propose? Sorry,
Chair, I'll propose.
Yeah, I'm happy to propose that, Chair.
And second? Lovely. Thank you. All those in favour? Anyone against? No? Okay, thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you for the discussion. And you happy with that, Joe, to put that word in there? Okay, thank you. Item number 2 is page 40 to 49, and this is the drill hole on 58 Lower Dock Street, and this is a planning breach, and this will be presented by Neil Gunther. Thank you. Neil has now got to work out how to get his presentation on the screen.
Apologies for the delay on getting that up. I'm unfamiliar with the process. Looking to bring to committee, particularly premises that, well, it's in a state of severe neglect, subject to a number of fires. We've been engaging with the owner. Unfortunately, until recently, we didn't have much joy with that approach. Hence, coming to committee to seek authorisation to serve Section 54 notice, which is essentially an urgent works notice. Now, these sorts of notices will not bring the building back into, how should we say, a serviceable use. It's literally to deal with the urgent issues on site, to make the building safe, to ensure the building survives and the public are not hurt as well. We've been engaging with building control because they have similar powers under the Building Act 1984 to serve an urgent works notice, so there is a degree of overlap. Last week, again, say the nature of this, we received a report which caused us a degree of concern in relation to the building. I'll just move forward just to show you where it is. In short, it highlighted concerns about the bay window which fronts onto Lower Dock Street. The building is number 58. Members who've lived in Newport for some time might remember it as Macy's or the Abundant Life Centre. In short, to say it's got to be nearly 6-7 years. So it's been burnt out, nothing happened with it. The report indicated that the bay window which fronts onto Lower Dock Street was at imminent risk of collapse. Beneath that is an arched doorway, and the joints to the arch are open. Needless to say, when we were aware of this concerns, we've consulted with Highways that collapse could actually block Lower Dock Street, also injure members of the public. To that end, we've made approaches to the owner, and some structural scaffolding that should have gone in this Sunday. It didn't, but it is now in place on Tuesday. Our Highways team are going to go out and look at it today. I've actually got some images which might help the members. As you can see there, we've got the structural scaffolding supporting it. Now, the two turrets either side are apparently structurally quite sound and are supporting the building. This scaffolding has gone in. This photograph doesn't really show it, but in my report, I actually cite the structural engineer's document. And you can see in there that the stone detailing to the bay window is a state of collapse. The roof to the bay is also constructed with stone corbelling. And there's almost an entire row of this corbelling that's gone. Given the height of the building, I mean, Lower Dock Street is quite wide, but if it did collapse, say, potential would be catastrophic. However, we've now got this scaffolding in place. Building control have seen it, Highways have seen it. I think it may need tweaking, but it does alleviate most of our concerns. Apologies for that. Just scroll back. As you can see there, the bay is braced. Potentially there's an issue with Cross Lane, which is to the north, and Caroline Street to the south. Caroline Street, not so much so, but there's a bit of loose masonry. We've advised them that's got to be removed to a sound course, but to minimise removal where necessary. I'm optimistic in that we've got this in place, but there still needs, much to be done. We will be looking at an application. According to the developer, we refused planning permission here for a number of units on several grounds. Whilst on site discussing this with the owner, I've been advised a planning application should be coming in shortly. As I say, given that how long this particular premises has been on our books and we've been pushing for this sort of scaffolding to be erected, I'd like to push, if we could, for committee to authorise service of an urgent works notice, because it was only when the structural engineer's report was so bad that they came back to the authority with this scaffolding scheme, and even then it was delayed. First it was Sunday, then Monday, and as I say, it was erected yesterday. In terms of urgent works, it would be the minimal, so things like covering the wall plate to stop water ingress. Now, if I go through to Cross Lane, you can see there at the top of the wall there is a polythene cover, which is obviously it's degraded over the years. What we'll be looking at is removing the loose brickwork from there, which the developer hasn't done. They've removed some, and so this photograph was taken yesterday. In the foreground at the top, you can see obviously the buddleia growing there, which will break up the brick courses. Though it's a narrow lane, it does serve a lot of properties facing out onto Caroline Street, and there are a number of businesses at the end of it. So it is a risk. And as I say, after this meeting, I will be getting in touch with the owner to ensure that this brickwork is removed and the buglier. If I move through to the Caroline Street elevation, as you can see there, it's a lower wall, and in the foreground, that stretch of wall there, it's in far better condition than the Caroline Street one. We've been in touch with Highways potentially about getting them stopped off, but we think if the loose masonry is removed and remedial works undertaken, that should be avoided whilst maintaining the safety of the public and the building. So in short, they've done some things, but it's taken several months to get to this position. As part of our empty properties group, we're targeting a number of such premises in and around Newport, and this is one that's been on our books for a few months. And it, as I say, it took until the structural engineer's report came in, and it really did highlight a number of concerns, and it did force Highways to actually cordon off part of Lower Dock Street. For members who aren't familiar with that part of Lower Dock Street, it's one way, and there is a number of quite large businesses along there, including George Street Furnitures. So you've got the movement of HGVs going along, and it's a sharp left turn when you get to the top of Caroline Street. And I witnessed a number of lorries almost clipping the Highways barrier that's in place. Now, the scaffolding is currently confined to the pavement area, so it should open up that section of highway a bit more. The Highways engineer should be going out tomorrow to view that, and obviously when we'll know more, I'll advise everyone. But the position is, as I say, as an authority, we want in principle authorisation to serve an urgent works notice should the owner developer renege on what's been promised. I say it's taken a while, and I am optimistic, but there are elements of it that do need urgent work, even albeit that the structural scaffolding is at the front of the building. I had an email from a structural engineer who drafted the report, and he was very positive about it. I still got some concerns, but I think they can be addressed. But the immediate risk has been addressed by this scaffolding that's gone up. It's essentially the area, if I go back slightly, so the area to the north is an area that's just been redeveloped as well, which is 57A, and then you've got an Indian restaurant here on the corner of Lower Dock Street. You can see how it bears round to the left as you're going up Lower Dock Street. Now, the scaffolding doesn't quite come as far as that northernmost turret, so it should allow room for vehicles to pass, because this was a concern of Highways. With it being a one-way street, it would have been really difficult to convert it with the lighting arrangements at the other end to a two-way. But in short, as I say, it seems to be moving in the right direction. I think that covers it. If we do works in default, we would be looking to recover the debt from the developer as well, which is highlighted in my report. I think that covers it, and it's open to any questions on that front.
Thank you. There's no public speakers on this. Anybody have any questions? Councillor Jordan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. God, I can remember that building when I was a kid, about 10 years of age, going out called Maskell's. I used to go rollerblading around there. My God, you know, and it's such a lovely such a lovely building it was. And I know the previous occupiers who were from the Josie Furnitures used to have that as a church. But yeah, when it caught fire, I seen it. It's such nice building to let it go to disrepair like it has been. I mean, so yeah, I totally agree. I totally support whatever necessary arrangements you need to make.
Councillor Cox.
I'm totally in favour of what's been proposed. The only comment I wanted to make is that it's, Councillor Jordan said, it's an attractive building to look at, but I honestly don't think in Newport people understand the importance of it historically. It's a massive part of Newport's history because that was where the original rifle company met that became the 1st Battalion of the Monmouthshire Regiment, and that was Newport's own sort of home battalion, and thousands of men from Newport served in the 2 World Wars in the Monmouthshires, and that was where the whole, the origins of the whole battalion came from in that building. So it really is of enormous historical importance.
Yeah. I just got one question to ask, Neil, is you say that the scaffolding has been put up now. Scaffolding is a great thing, but if that was to collapse, would the scaffolding be suffice to support it from falling on the road, or would the scaffolding likely go with it as well?
I've got to say this is outside of my area of expertise. I'll be quite honest with you, but I have consulted with our structural engineer who got back to me this morning in relation to the scaffolding, and he was quite positive about it. Okay. As I say, all the relevant parties have been informed, so they'll be looking at the scaffolding from their point of view. As I say, I think there's a twofold concern here. That one is the structural integrity of the building, but is also the safety of the public. Most of the scaffolding is concentrated around the bay, which the structural engineer highlighted as of particular concern, particularly with the corbelling. As I say, my photographs don't do it justice, but you are looking at a single row is virtually missing from that corbelling, and the vertical and horizontal uprights within the bay, the stonework is severely eroded. So it is, hopefully it's secure, and everything leads me to believe that at the moment, but certainly if I learn to the contrary, I'll inform committee to that.
Okay, thank you. Okay then, the recommendations are that that the urgent work notices are to be referred. Could we everybody have a proposer, please? Second. All those in favour? Okay. Okay, thank you. That's passed unanimously. The last agenda item is at page 51, which is for information only. Thank you all for attending, and I look forward to seeing you again next month. Thank you. Okay, thank you.